Hello, everybody. What is going on? As per the poll that came out a few days ago, today we are going to be going over sweepers. More specifically, how you can best enable your sweepers to get the most sweeps off, to get the most kills in the draft, and how you can plan around whatever specific sweeper you find. Reminder, draft is coming up this Sunday, so hopefully you can walk away from this presentation with a little bit of a better idea of what your plan will be. So, without further ado, let's just jump right into breaking down this concept. I thought the simplest approach would be to go over some key principles and using examples of teams from the last season of King's Court and how we can find some of these synergies in them. More specifically, the three best sweepers from Fable League, at least, being Iron Valiant, Armor and Reverum. So, all different, but still a lot of kills between the three. And we're gonna take a look as to how they did it. So, we're gonna start off with probably the most boring concept and obvious: hazards. They're good, yeah. Like, obviously, you probably know that offensive hazards are going to be able to, they're going to be helping you get through defensive walls, but I would still be remiss if I didn't talk about it because they really are just that important. Alright? You have to remember that even though in the moment, right, 12% doesn't seem like it's an insane impact, but getting off a sweep is all about these damage thresholds. So anything you can do to get a mon above or above that KO threshold is going to be the difference between a successful sweep and a failure, right? The difference between something living on 1 and getting a Thunder Wave off and dying at 0 is huge, right? Like, that's just the end of your sweep right there. Don't really get second chances once you've attempted to go all in on a sweep. So being able to get that key chip goes a really long way. And it's also one of the key parts of early game, right? If you're trying to get a sweep in, you need to get a lot of early game chip. So getting 2 or 3 switches of Stealth Rock in on the defensive wall is going to be huge. Looking at our examples from last season, you start to see mons like this, specifically Samurott, Hisui, and Ting Lu, who are both great examples of some of the most reliable hazard setters in the game. They get hazards up early, often, and a lot of games they can get them up multiple times, even in the face of hazard removal. So just strong hazard games like these enables you to get hazards up almost every game. So it's going to go a long way. It's going to make your sweepers a lot more lethal. Our next drafting principle is going to be on supporting your sweeper defensively. Again, you don't really want to go all in on a sweep until you can ensure victory, or at the very least ensure however much damage you're trying to land. Meaning that there's going to be a lot of times when you're going to have to switch out your sweeper because it's a little too early or something, or maybe you're trying to force a specific matchup to get better positioning, like that. It can be hard to play a 5v6 with one mon permanently in the back. So a lot of the times in your games, you're going to have to bring out your sweeper early to threaten something key or something like that. You can see this defensive principle of being able to cover switches in things like Moltres covering Reverum very well defensively. Covering both of its weaknesses and being able to switch in on anything that threatens Reverum. And it's just going to allow you to wait till the right time. This also applies to Terra as well. A lot of games ripping Terra early could come with a lot of drawbacks. Maybe it's your opponent's way out of getting swept, and also leaves that defensive option. It lets you have that option later on in the game with more information. So having defensive options to fall back on means you don't have to rip it quite as early if it's not looking like a good time. It's going to enable you to have much more options and be way less predictable in trying to go sweep. Looking back at our other two examples, so Armarouge being supported very well by things like Zarude, complementing its typing very well defensively, as well as Metagross being a great defensive swap for Iron Valiant. So, last but certainly not least, I have saved the most important thing of them all for the very end. We're going to be looking at how you can support your sweepers offensively. When you are drafting, you want to be looking at things that break well for your team. Now, what do I mean by this? The key thing to look out for are mons that lure in checks to your sweeper. And however they do it, they're able to get key damage and make it stick. Now this sounds slightly counterintuitive at first, right? Like you're trying to grab a mon that gets checked by something you already have, but if you play these matchups well, that you should be setting yourself up for checkmate later in the game. I promise you, go watch your favorite YouTuber, whatever, watch them do a showdown live or something. There will be a point in that video where they say something along the lines of, yeah, I just need to get chip on X mon, and then we win the game. And this is exactly because some of the best sweepers are only going to have a handful of viable checks, and being able to identify what those handful of mons are going to be, and being able to also know how you can lure them in and get damage on them is going to be the easiest way to get victory for your sweeper. Now going into the example portion, this was by far the easiest group to identify because, like I said, if you don't have something like this on your team, you're not going to have a successful sweeper. Just end of story. It's going to make your life so much harder. But looking at these, you have mons like Iron Hands coming in and just checking, forcing a lot of damage onto the ground types that Revroom hates, putting it in range of things like its Terra Blast later on in the game, where it's strong, but it's definitely not going to come close to OHKOing a lot of the bulky ground types. So Iron Hands luring them in early on in the game and sticking a lot of damage, just because it has such high damage, such high stats, is going to make Revroom more lethal. Cinderace luring in a lot of fire type checks, and just again, you're going to see a theme here. It clicks high base power moves, and it just has a lot of damage itself. It kind of forces damage onto checks just by doing just an absurd amount of damage. Samurott doesn't do this as much, but it makes up for it in the fact that it's helping to break through setting up spikes, right? And again, Samurott is one of the best fairy type lures in the game. So it comes in, forces a fairy type to switch in, it gets key damage, it sets up spike, and that's another reason why Iron Val can become so dangerous later on in the game. And that's going to be all for today. If I had one thing to take away that you should take away from this video, it's that you should be looking out for this third principle. You need to be able to figure out, okay, here's what would get in the way of sweep. How do I make sure? How do I play around, make my game plan, make my draft on getting this thing low? And that's the approach you should be looking for with the breakers in regards to setting up your to success. So, thank you very much if you've made it this far. If you want to join us for our upcoming draft on Sunday, if you just feel like watching or something, or potentially joining King's Court for future seasons, be sure to check out the Discord link in the description. All that said, I hope to see you all on draft day, and best of luck to you all.